What if the fate of war is no longer decided by tanks rumbling down muddy roads, or by soldiers entrenched in endless lines, but by the silent, unseen hand that plunges entire cities into darkness and silence? In Ukraine, this chilling reality is unfolding right before our eyes. Overnight, the south of the country was battered by relentless waves of drone swarms, dozens, scores, perhaps even over 100 unmanned aerial vehicles, followed by the roar of strategic bombers. This was no isolated raid, nor a simple show of force. Instead, it was a meticulously coordinated campaign, executed with a singular, devastating aim: to cripple the very arteries that keep the nation alive. Imagine for a moment, critical infrastructure, the lifeblood of any modern society, became the prime target. Ports, essential for both military logistics and economic survival, energy substations that light up entire regions, and logistics hubs that ensure the constant flow of supplies. All these bore the brunt of the assault. As the night sky erupted in explosions, fires raged, and vast blackouts swept outward like a tide of darkness. In mere moments, electricity, heat, and all forms of communication simply vanished for entire regions, leaving millions of civilians exposed to the cold, confusion, and a gnawing sense of uncertainty. This is not a story confined to the front lines where soldiers clash. The reality is far starker. Strikes have targeted gas plants in the north and high-voltage factories perilously close to the battlefield, severing supply lines and halting crucial industrial production. The impact of these attacks radiates like shockwaves through the fabric of society. When the lights go out and fuel no longer flows, it is not just the soldiers on the front who suffer. Entire populations are thrust into a desperate scramble for survival. A new and more dangerous phase of this conflict has begun. Both sides are racing to adapt to these unprecedented challenges, but for civilians, the risk has transformed from distant danger to an existential threat. The pillars of daily life, power, food, and safety, now teeter on the very edge. The war, once a distant event, threatens to unravel the systems that keep society functioning. To truly understand how we reach this point, we must look beyond the firefights and the territorial advances. We must decode how this conflict has morphed into a battle for the very backbone of daily life. A war that no longer just targets armies, but the core systems that allow a nation to survive. How did this transformation happen? What does it mean for millions trapped in the crossfire? Let us peel back the layers and examine the tactics, the thinking, and the consequences behind this shadow war on infrastructure. A war that is increasingly shaping the future of not just Ukraine, but all nations vulnerable to such strategies. This is not just another air raid, nor a random act of destruction. What's unfolding over Ukraine is a carefully calculated blueprint for crippling a nation, without ever needing to cross the front lines. In recent nights, the attacks have evolved from sporadic missile barrages and psychological operations into something far more relentless. A systematic campaign, designed to shatter the country's backbone, its logistics, its energy, its ability to function as a modern state. We are no longer witnessing isolated blasts or opportunistic strikes. Drones and missiles now arrive in tightly coordinated waves, each chosen for maximum disruption and precisely timed. These strikes are not random. They are methodical, plunging entire regions into rolling blackouts that last for hours, sometimes even for days. Cities and towns, already weary from the burdens of war, find themselves cut off from electricity, heat, and the ability to communicate just as winter's deadly grip tightens. Consider the confirmed targets. Major ports along the Black Sea, which are crucial for both military resupply and for exporting the grain that feeds much of Europe and Africa, have been crippled. The port of Odessa, once bustling with activity, now sits silent, its cranes twisted and its warehouses smoldering. Repair plants, facilities that keep trains, trucks, and armored vehicles moving, lie in ruins, their assembly lines halted. Gas processing sites, essential for both heating and industry, have burned for hours under relentless bombardment, sending plumes of smoke visible for miles. Electric substations and transport hubs, the nodes that keep the country connected, have been battered into silence, their crucial functions halted. Yet the damage does not end there. In Sloviansk, a key frontline logistics hub, energy factories have been struck with surgical precision, putting a stop to the production of vital components for the energy grid. In the Sumy region, gas facilities that supply both local homes and much of western Ukraine have been set ablaze, with explosions rumbling through the night. Even everyday conveniences, tram lines and mobile phone networks in cities like Kharkiv and Kryvyi Rih, have been knocked offline, leaving civilians isolated, unable to call for help or even check on loved ones. These are not just military operations, they are attacks on every layer of daily life. The goal is unmistakable, to break not just Ukraine's ability to fight, but the country's capacity to function. Imagine a winter night, the temperature plunging below freezing, and suddenly, there is no heat, no electricity, and no way to call for help. When heat, power, and communication are all under siege, no one is left untouched. If this new strategy succeeds, the consequences could be catastrophic. It would weaken Ukraine's military response, paralyze troop movements, cripple economic activity, and threaten the very survival of millions through the bitter winter. Entire communities now face terrifying nights, blackouts, fuel shortages, and isolation as the cold closes in, turning homes into icy tombs. But why escalate to this level now? What are these coordinated strikes truly meant to achieve beyond the battlefield? To understand, we must look deeper into the evolving strategies and the dangerous calculations on both sides. Let us consider a historical parallel. During World War II, the Allies and Axis both targeted each other's industrial and energy infrastructure, trying to cripple the enemy's ability to wage war. The bombing of German fuel plants by the Allies, for example, was a turning point that deprived the German military of critical resources. Today in Ukraine, we are witnessing a similar logic, though executed with far more precision and technological sophistication. The roots of this campaign reach deep into the realities of modern warfare. They are shaped by shifting priorities, dwindling resources, and the brutal demands of winter combat. Russia, facing a protracted conflict and unable to achieve rapid territorial gains, has recalibrated its strategy. If it cannot win quickly on the battlefield, it will try to win by grinding down the enemy's will and ability to function. The true battle now is not just at the front lines, but in the invisible war to keep the electricity flowing, the trains moving, and the soldiers supplied. While headlines focus on artillery duels and territorial advances, a deadlier contest simmers in the background, one waged against the lifelines of daily existence and the machinery of war. Russian tactics have evolved markedly. Gone are the days of sporadic missile strikes. Now, a systematic campaign unfolds, engineered to plunge entire regions into darkness before winter's grip tightens. This is not chaos, but a deliberate strategy, to wear Ukraine down, not by direct defeat, but by exhaustion and deprivation. The aim is to sap morale, disrupt daily life, and force the government and people to make impossible choices. Critical infrastructure across Ukraine is battered relentlessly. In Kharkiv, substations are blasted, trams stand motionless, and neighborhoods endure days without power. In Kyiv, oil depots ignite, sending black plumes skyward. Precision strikes hit vital supply hubs in Vasilkiv and Kalinivka, threatening both energy reserves and military logistics in one blow. The list of targeted sites reads like a catalogue of what makes modern society possible. Ukraine's defenders are stretched ever thinner. Attacks now erupt in multiple cities at once, Pokrovsk, Rodinske, and across the Donbass, forcing the military to fragment its responses, expose its underbelly, and chase threats that never rest. The intent is unmistakable: sow chaos, overwhelm defenses, and probe for weak points to exploit again and again. This is the same logic that guided the German Blitz during the Second World War, when London and other cities were relentlessly bombed, not just for direct military gain, but to break the spirit and resilience of the civilian population. The tools of this shadow war have grown dramatically more sophisticated. Drones are no longer few and primitive. Entire swarms of advanced models, some capable of evading radar and jamming signals, sweep through the night, sometimes paired with cruise missiles, other times woven into hybrid assaults that confound air defenses. Both sides race to adapt, but the frenetic tempo increasingly favors those on the attack. In December of last year, a similar tactic was used, with drones and missiles hitting energy infrastructure in a coordinated assault that left millions without power for days. For ordinary Ukrainians, the cost is profound and deeply personal. Hospitals are plunged into darkness, surgeries halted mid-operation, vital medicines ruined as refrigeration fails. Food spoils in powerless refrigerators, ovens grow cold, and families huddle together under blankets, unable to charge a single phone or contact loved ones. Life itself becomes precarious. Mere survival is suddenly uncertain. Scenes reminiscent of Leningrad's siege during World War II, where civilians endured months without heat or light, are returning, albeit with modern technological twists. Yet, within the blackout, new forms of resilience flicker to life. Volunteers set up communal kitchens on battered streets, sharing what little food and warmth they have. Aid networks work around the clock, gathering blankets, batteries, and bottled water. Grassroots organizations, often organized via encrypted messaging apps, spring up to replace broken systems, determined to shepherd neighbors through the long, bleak nights, however many may come. Meanwhile, a parallel war rages in the digital realm. Both sides scramble to control the story, shouting triumphs, hiding losses, twisting facts to capture global sympathy. A flood of images, claims, and denials swamps the internet, making truth yet another casualty. This information war, like the propaganda battles of the past, can shape international support, influence morale, and even determine the willingness of allies to provide aid. The danger escalates daily. Failing to keep pace means more than military defeat. It spells humanitarian catastrophe for millions. No warmth, no food, no way to call for help. The survival of entire cities, and perhaps the war's very outcome, now depends on who can outlast the other in darkness. The stakes are as high as during the Berlin airlift, when Western resolve was tested against a Soviet blockade. Except now, the threat is not a physical wall, but the sudden, creeping paralysis of a society deprived of its invisible lifelines. As attacks intensify and misinformation spreads, winter inches closer. What will happen as the cold becomes as deadly as any missile? In World War I, more soldiers perished from exposure and disease in the trenches than from enemy bullets. In modern Ukraine, the risk is similar. If infrastructure collapses, the cold itself becomes a weapon of mass destruction. The coming weeks will test not just military strength, but the endurance of a nation under siege. The next phase will demand new tactics, deeper resilience, and perhaps even a redefinition of victory itself. Survival may depend on the ability to adapt, improvise, and maintain hope when all else seems lost. Winter is no longer just a threat. It is a weapon wielded by both sides. Russia aims to freeze resistance, while Ukraine seeks to harness community spirit and ingenuity to outlast the assault. The conflict in Ukraine has shifted dramatically. Instead of only clashing along muddy front lines, the struggle now targets the veins of the nation: power grids, ports, railways, and supply lines. Russia is intensifying its assault, launching barrages that cripple infrastructure and sow chaos just as temperatures plunge. Ukraine races to adapt, stockpiling generators, fuel, and portable heaters wherever possible. Schools and public halls are transformed into makeshift warming shelters. Convoys snake through blackout zones, hauling vital aid to those left in the cold. But the danger grows ever sharper. Russia has reportedly brought in advanced missile systems from the Far East, increased submarine patrols in the Black Sea, and coordinated attacks with unprecedented precision. Their assaults are not random. They are tightly orchestrated, often striking energy hubs, transport arteries, and communications simultaneously. Waves of drones and cruise missiles crash down for hours, often timing their attacks when repairs are underway or supplies are being unloaded. Each strike aims not just to break defenses, but to shatter the backbone of daily life. Ukraine's defenders are now stretched to the breaking point. Simultaneous attacks force Kiev to split its limited resources, defending not only soldiers at the front, but also the power stations, rail links, and substations that keep the nation alive. Each blackout, each shattered junction, is more than a tactical setback. It is a blow to the survival of millions. This echoes the dilemmas faced during the siege of Sarajevo in the 1990s, where defending the city meant protecting both people and the invisible systems that sustained them. Alarm spreads in Western capitals. NATO analysts warn that the true battlefield is shifting from trenches to the invisible web of cables, pipes, and tracks that connect society. The logic is chilling. Paralyze infrastructure before the coldest nights, and you can freeze resistance in its tracks. This is the logic of hybrid warfare, where the tools are as much economic and psychological as they are military. The cost is staggering. Fuel, food, and medicine prices spiral as supply chains fray. Prolonged outages choke businesses, force hospitals to shut down, and spoil crops. Every destroyed transformer or burned rail bridge delays recovery by months or even years. The economic impact ripples outward, threatening not only Ukraine, but the stability of Europe as a whole. During the Blitz in London, the city relied on an intricate web of support and improvisation to keep functioning. Today, every shattered transformer or burned warehouse in Ukraine is a reminder of how fragile our modern systems truly are. It is civilians who bear the brunt. Reports multiply of families crowding into frigid apartments, eating cold food by candlelight, or waiting hours in line for clean water. The risk of displacement surges as basic services fail. If Ukraine cannot restore its lifelines quickly, the conflict could tip from hardship into true societal collapse and mass migration. The world saw similar patterns during the Syrian civil war, where the destruction of infrastructure led to a wave of refugees and profound geopolitical consequences. This is not just a battle for territory. It is a fight for survival against the elements and engineered chaos. As winter deepens, the outcome will depend on whose lifelines hold and whose break first. In the age of hybrid war, survival is measured by more than firepower. Adaptability, information, and community have become the new essentials. When missiles and drones target power plants and supply lines, the battlefield shifts from distant trenches to the very heart of daily life. The message is unmistakable. Preparedness is no longer a luxury, but a requirement for everyone. So, what can be done? On a practical level, stockpiling food, water, medicine, and cash can mean the difference between safety and chaos when blackouts hit or supply chains break down. Backup power, generators, batteries, solar panels, and alternative ways to communicate, like satellite messengers or radios, transform from conveniences into lifelines. In a world where vital infrastructure can vanish in a single night, these are not extras. They are basic survival tools. In Ukraine, some neighborhoods have created shared generator banks, rotating power to keep refrigerators running and phones charged. In other countries, governments have issued guides to citizens on how to prepare for extended outages, drawing lessons from Ukraine's experience. Yet survival cannot rest on individual shoulders alone. When official systems collapse, community support networks become critical. Across Ukraine and beyond, mutual aid groups spring into action, organizing food drives, sharing generators, and evacuating the vulnerable, sometimes within hours. Local, fast-moving efforts fill gaps that no government agency can cover in real time. During the blackout in New York City in 2003, thousands of people spontaneously organized to direct traffic, distribute water, and check on elderly neighbors. These examples show the power of community resilience in the face of sudden disaster. Still, resources alone are not enough. Information, timely, accurate, and untainted, is just as vital as food or fuel. Today, the information war is as fierce as any battle. News, rumors, and propaganda swirl, threatening to mislead and divide. Your best shield is critical thinking. Never trust a single source. Always verify. Bad information can trigger panic or deadly mistakes, sometimes with consequences worse than any missile strike. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, misinformation about crime and safety caused unnecessary panic and hindered rescue efforts. The lesson is clear: reliable information saves lives. Personal resilience now means more than a stockpile. Adaptability, the willingness to change plans and improvise, may be your greatest asset. Stress management, self-awareness, and knowing whom to trust are as essential as any generator. In a crisis, calm and clarity can save lives when supplies alone cannot. The experience of the Finnish people during the Winter War, where adaptability and community spirit helped them withstand a much larger adversary, serves as a powerful example for today. For leaders, the stakes are even higher. Investing in robust, redundant infrastructure, energy, logistics, communication, has become a cornerstone of national security. Rapid repair teams and realistic contingency plans must be in place before disaster strikes. Waiting until crisis hits risks lives and shatters livelihoods. In Singapore, for example, the government has developed layered backup systems for water, power, and food supplies, and conducts regular nationwide readiness drills. These measures, though expensive, have proven invaluable during actual emergencies. If we neglect preparation, or if we accept only official narratives without question, we risk both physical harm and psychological collapse. The true front line of modern war runs not just across territory, but through the invisible bonds and networks that hold societies together. This is not merely a Ukrainian problem, but a warning to all nations. Any society dependent on complex infrastructure is vulnerable to similar attacks. Now, as winter approaches and attacks on infrastructure intensify, the stakes escalate even further. Every outage, every disrupted supply line, becomes a test of both national resolve and personal resilience. Ukrainians are already adapting. Some have built makeshift stoves, others have learned to filter snow for drinking water, and many have organized local watch groups to deter looting during blackouts. These acts of ingenuity and solidarity are the foundation of hope in a time of crisis. The next chapter of this conflict will not be captured solely in headlines. It will be written in the daily struggles of millions enduring invisible battles at home. The world may see only statistics, but behind every number is a family, a community, striving to endure against the odds. Beyond the roar of explosions and flashes of breaking news, a quieter war is quietly suffocating the lifeblood of modern societies. Ports, power stations, railways, and communication networks are now more than strategic targets. They have become the nerves and arteries of entire nations, subject to relentless assault. War once seemed far away, a contest of territory, troop numbers, and distant front lines. Yet now, those front lines have shifted. The fight has entered cities, apartments, even the smartphones in our hands. Every blackout, every night spent without heat, every dropped call or shattered signal is a stark reminder. This struggle is about the most basic forms of survival. The stakes are no longer abstract. When lights go out, not for minutes, but for hours or days, families scramble to preserve food, stay warm, and keep hope alive. Children finish homework by candlelight. Hospitals ration dwindling power. Shops close their doors, losing precious income. The true cost of war reveals itself in sleepless nights, shivering mornings, and the quiet resilience of ordinary people. These small acts, sharing a meal, checking on a neighbor, finding a new way to stay warm, are the real stories of survival. The world cannot afford to dismiss these attacks as isolated or distant tragedies. The systematic targeting of infrastructure is a blueprint that could be unleashed anywhere, at any time. From Ukraine to the rest of the globe, the next shock might come without warning, testing the strength of societies accustomed to steady power and seamless connections. The cyber attack on Estonia in 2007, which temporarily crippled banks, media, and government offices, was an early warning of how quickly the fabric of daily life can unravel. To overlook this hidden war is to invite disaster. Preparedness is no longer just a government or military concern. It is a challenge for every household, every business, every neighborhood. Will we wait for catastrophe, or heed the lessons written in darkness and cold? With winter closing in and new strategies unfolding, the responsibility falls on all of us to reconsider what true security means. To support each other, to endure, and to recognize that these silent battles may ultimately decide our future. The story of Ukraine is not just a warning. It is an urgent call to action, a reminder that in an age of hybrid war, resilience, personal, communal, and national, is our greatest defense.